Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Wells, and I write horror, fantasy, and science fiction novels. I also talk about games on the internet. Today, I want to talk about Runequest gaming, game master adventures. What is this called? Gamemaster Adventures. This is an adventure book for role-playing in Glorantha, the Runequest core game. And I've reviewed Runequest before. Short version. It's kind of a Bronze Age fantasy questing game. Very similar in spirit to Pendragon, and written, in fact, by the same game designer, Greg Stafford. There is not a great RuneQuest campaign in the same way that there is a great Pendragon campaign, but the game is structured in a similar way, where you... If I were to boil down RuneQuest into just a couple of sentences, it is fantasy adventure gaming that overtly avoids the murder hobo problem by giving the character a very solid family grounding. You can't just wander around doing things. You have a home, you have a clan, you have holdings that you need to take care of, you get married, you have children, and then that leads into, similar to Pendragon, a kind of long-term generational style of play where each adventure is going to take place in a different year, and in between adventures you're going to get older, your holdings are going to increase, you're going to have children, and those children are going to grow up, and it's a really unique take on role-playing, and one that I really like. The world of Glorantha itself is very detailed, and there's a lot of information to get into. And in fact, even this adventure book, only half of it is adventure. The full first half of it is more setting information because there's simply so much to get through. So let's have a look, boink, at what is in this book. Okay? So the first little bit here, all of this stuff is, in fact, all the way down to here, is all setting information. So the first 70 of these 120 pages is setting information. Okay? And it's going to start by talking about the Kolamar tribe. The game is split into regions and kingdoms, and then those kingdoms are sect down into tribes, and then each tribe is broken down further into clans. Kolamar is the default setting for characters in this game. You don't have to be from here, but it is encouraged that some of you be from here because that's where most of the information is, and that's certainly where this adventure supplement starts. Okay? So if you want to learn about Kolamar, everything you ever wanted to know. In fact, in typical Greg Stafford style, far more information than you will actually need to play is included here. And that's great because the world feels round. It feels complete. There are things around the corner, and you don't ever have to go around that corner, but you know that if you do, there's something there. That is a really neat thing. You don't have to know, in order to run or play this game, every single aspect of Kolamar tribe history. But there are bits that you can know, and different players can know different things, and the Game Master can know that they are all true, and that helps the setting feel humongous. So, page after page of this, like so many past kings of the Kolamar tribe that they don't all fit on a single page. And it goes on and on and on and on. Okay? And then we get down into the clans. Who are the different clans that make up the Kolamar? The Ernaldori, they are the default, again, starting clan. So while, one thing the character, once we get into the adventures later on, they say one or two players ought to ideally be Kolamar tribe and Ernaldori clan, but everyone else can be from anywhere else, and that's fine. You just need some kind of tie to the region in order to make the rest of the adventures work. So go through, and then here's like How are the clans and tribes connected to each other? Clear and Wine Fort is drilling in more closely. This is kind of the seat of the Kolimar tribe. Where are they from? It's this great big city. There's the queen who currently rules it. There's stats for all these people. More people than you ever thought you needed to get to know. Here's a map with incredible detail, and it's a 2-page spread that looks just wonderful. And goes through what are all those buildings? Well, we'll tell you all those buildings. What else is in here? Everything's in here. This even gets into the surrounding areas. What is around Clearwine Fort. And who are dragon newts? Well, they're a new type of elder race, not a new type, but they don't get a ton of description and stats in the core book. You'll need them for this. So here's all these stats. Here's who they are. Here's what they do. Here's how they work. Again, so many people and all of this stuff. So we're going through, and I'm just kind of clicking through to show you. Oh, and there's this dryad here. This is another town outside of Clearwine called Runegate. Then you get into the Grove, and Tarndisi is a dryad that lives in this grove. So you get to know not just the tribe and not just the city that centers them, but a lot of detail in the area around them. Okay? And then what are the neighbors and all these things. Now we get into Apple Lane. This drills even further down. This is one village, essentially, in Kolimar lands. This is an Ernaldori village. And what is it like? Well, you get everything. You don't just get to know about the village. You get to know the exact layout of the Thane's house, all of the people who live there and work there. So many stats on who all these people are. And then a full map of Apple Lane. The maps in this book are incredibly great. They're beautiful. They're complete. There's so much information. And then last of all, we have some rumors. And these rumors are just adventure hooks. And what is interesting about it is the rumors are marked as to whether they are true or false or kind of true or maybe true if you decide you want them to be. And there are 100 of them. And it takes a lot of pages to get through them all. And some of them are really compelling adventure ideas. So even searching these to find out if they are true or not could give you a fantastic adventure, even if the rumor turns out to be false. So that's really neat. Now we get into the adventures themselves. The second half of this book is 3 adventures. And while they are good, they seem to be, to me, weird choices for the adventure. And what is most interesting about this is right here on this first page, it talks about current events and then talks about all this stuff. Okay? What it describes in these paragraphs is far more interesting than anything that happens in the 3 adventures in this book. And basically, if you have read the core book or if you've watched my review of the core book, you know that one of the main events that kind of kicks off this era of history is called the Dragon Rise. There's an empire called the Lunar Empire that had conquered generations ago this entire region. They rule and control everything. And then that was all destroyed by the Dragon Rise. Some people were able to wake up a dragon, and it's enormous, kilometers long kind of dragon. And it's out there zooming around, completely throws down the Lunar Empire, destroys them, does all of this fascinating stuff. It's a giant magical dragon apocalypse. And these adventures start 2 weeks later, which is not a decision that I understand. I don't know why. And maybe if there were adventure supplements somewhere else that say, here is a way for you to play through the Dragon Rise. That would be awesome, and then this adventure could start next. These adventures are clearly designed to start new characters on a journey. The first one is you defend Apple Lane from some bad guys, And if you do a really great job, one of you gets to be the new Thane, and then you are established with a home base, and you've got a setting, and you've got holdings to protect, and you've got people and NPCs to interact with, and then, you know, the adventures go on from there. But why do you not get to play through the Dragon Rise itself? I genuinely don't know why you would skip that. And if you are going to include that, you absolutely can do that yourself. That's kind of a game master's job, right? But if you get to the point where you are going to create all of these cool adventures and run the characters through the Dragon Rise, well, then why do you need this book? The setting information is useful. The adventures are fun. I just really feel like they're focused on the wrong thing, which is a weird thing to be saying. Anyway, let's assume for a moment that you have dealt with this Dragon Rise. You've either come to terms with it emotionally, and you don't need an adventure to explain everything to you, or you have already run the characters through it, or maybe you're just content saying, hey, this thing happened, it was devastating, but you're alive and now you're, you know, you're going through. One of the things that I do like about this is, you know, here at the bottom, it says, the timeless ritual of the harvest carried on despite these world-shaking events. Cereals, apples, grapes, and figs all need to be harvested, and so despite the fears of war and dragons, life is carried on. And that's true. Maybe for your playgroup, it's enough to say, yep, things were crazy as crap 2 weeks ago, but you still got to harvest these figs, so life goes on. Maybe that's enough for you. It wasn't for me, but regardless. The adventures are fun. So let's say that you've dealt with the Dragon Rise, either on screen in your adventure or in the backstory somehow, and then you're like, well, what happens next? Let's go. Defending Apple Lane is very much like a Magnificent Seven Samurai kind of story, where the bandits are going to raid the town, and the town says, hey, can we hire you to protect us? And you say yes, and then you protect the town from bandits. And these are like evil half-troll bandits that ride on boars, and they're big and scary, and there's a neat little story there. And there you go, and you go through the whole thing. There are stats and individual names for every Tusk Raider in this entire bad guy group. And then you go through that, and you deal with it. And maybe you become the Thane, and maybe you don't, and then you're done. Next up, the second adventure is called Cattle Raid, which is basically you're the Thane now, although it does give 2 other options. If you're not the Thane, how do you pull the characters into this adventure? There's a lot of work done to make sure that this adventure is playable and compelling, whether you're the Thane or not. Basically, some cows get loose, you gotta go get them back, you find that another tribe has taken them, and you fight. Both of these, and then, okay, well, before we get into this, before we get into my review, let's talk about the third adventure, which is the Dragon of Thunder Hills. A dragon has attacked a town, you have to deal with it. That involves talking to several different people, going on a pretty dangerous quest. And so what I wanted to say is that all 3 of these adventures are fantastic as exemplars of what a Runequest adventure could be like. You are trying to, you know, keep your clan and your tribe happy and productive. You are trying to appease the spirits. You're trying to make sure that they are safe and protected, and you're trying to plan for their future. And all of these are great ways of doing that. They have the right balance of social work and the right balance of combat and the right balance of adventure and magic and appeasement of spirits. And they do a great job of really getting you into the vibe of Glorantha itself. What is it like to live in a Bronze Age magical society? And how, you know, what is important to you? How do you protect what is important to you? Etc. If that sounds interesting to you, then this is a fantastic book. But like I said, even if you don't care for these 3 adventures. You want something that is more compelling or larger. You want to play through the Dragon Rise. You want to do something else. Or maybe you simply want to work with your own backstory. One of the things that's strange about this adventure series is that it assumes the characters do not actually come from Apple Lane, which is interesting because so much of character creation is who is your father, who is your grandfather and your grandmother, how many siblings do you have, where is your family, and it's very weird to do all of that work in character creation and then immediately uproot you and plop you down in Apple Lane and say, okay, this is your new home. Like, do you bring all your family in? Does that double or triple the size of the village when all the player characters bring all of their siblings and sisters and cousins and aunts? So there's a lot of core assumptions about the game that I feel like these adventures don't address. And then, of course, there is a lot of core setting information that these adventures kind of gloss over. Why skip over the dragon apocalypse and then focus on defending a village from trolls? I don't know. I have very mixed feelings about this. RuneQuest is a really cool game with a lot of really compelling ideas behind it, and I recommend that game wholeheartedly. I recommend this adventure book half-heartedly. The setting information is fantastic. The adventures themselves are emblematic of what good adventures could be, but I feel like they are not really tuned to the right wavelength, at least for me. They skip a lot of stuff that I find interesting and kind of necessary. Anyway, at the end of the book, there's a couple of pages of adventure seeds, some more kind of cool stories that you could tell in Glorantha, and then there's a big section on metal and crystals and what do they do and how do you use them and stuff like that. So anyway, Gamemaster Adventures. Oops. Let's show you the cover again. Let's end on that image. There we go. It is a pretty cool book. Half of it is fantastic information. Half of it is okay adventures. And I think that if you want to play in Glorantha, this is a really good first stop just to give you a sense of how to do it. You will inevitably create more compelling adventures down the line, but that's not really a strike against this book because that's what game masters are for, is and that's what role-playing games are for, is to give you the tools to create really fantastic stories of your own with you and your group. So that's what this book does at the end of the day, in spite of its other flaws, and because of that, I do recommend it. So, RuneQuest, Gamemaster Adventures, check it out. I also encourage you to check out some of my other stuff. I do a D&D actual play campaign on Twitch called Typecast RPG. Right now it is a D&D 5th edition campaign in a homebrew setting. All of the players and me are published authors, and so we are trying to do our best to tell a really good story in this new format, and it's a lot of fun. So check us out there. Also, I am a professional game master in other settings as well, and I run games for people online. If you'd like me to run a game for you and your friends, I've got all of that information linked in the section below as well. So anyway, thanks for watching. I will talk to you later. You're awesome.